Hello everyone, my name is Andreea Dogar and I'm the academic coordinator at Carfax Education Baku, and today we are going to discuss about English politeness. Now, has it ever happened to you that regardless of how honourable or nice your intentions were, you were considered rude or offensive? Or has it happened that your request went unanswered? It might be that your English is not polite enough. Now, this normally happens with a British audience where politeness is at home, but not necessarily. Good words cost nothing but are worth more. So today we're going to have a look at the proper ways to be polite in English. It is important to understand from the beginning that we are polite not just for the sake of etiquette or for rules, but simply because we care for other people's feelings and we don't want to hurt them. The key and golden rule for English politeness is to make what we say or what we write less direct. There are different ways in which we can do this, but the most important one is to use softening words or hedges. So for instance, when we want to ask someone a favour or we want to offer a suggestion, we should avoid using the imperative, saying wash the dishes, go to your room, do this or do that. It's better if we use more soft words, let's say, and use a positive tone. For instance, if you have a colleague at work in the office who is talking very loudly on the phone, it's not polite to say stop talking very loudly on the phone. You could say something, could you possibly talk a bit more quietly please, or would you mind talking a bit more quietly please? That's obviously going to have a positive impact on your colleague's reaction. Also, when we want to give feedback, and that's more difficult, let's say, instead of saying you have to do your homework with more care, we can rephrase that and say your improvement or your performance would be more visible if you spend more time and give more attention to your homework. That's obviously going to improve your student or your child's work quicker. Also, we have different social situations such as over dinner. Instead of asking your friends, give me the salt please, you can say, could you pass me the salt please? And that's a more polite and a friendlier way to ask for something. Other situations include when we are not available, and that could happen with friends or, for instance, with your employees. It's not polite to simply say, go away. We can say, could you give me a moment? I would like to finish this or finish that. Or when we talk on the phone, where it's more difficult because you don't necessarily see the person you're talking to, you can say, could you hold for a moment, please? It's vital that you remember to use the magic word please, which always makes a tremendous difference to our speech. Also, when we don't understand what someone's saying, it's natural for us to ask sorry, but that's not necessarily the best way to ask for someone to repeat something. We can use more polite ways such as excuse me or pardon me, which is again British specific. Or, for instance, there are different ways in which we can refuse an invitation, and this is, of course, a more complicated situation, let's say. Instead of simply saying, no, I can't attend or I can't come, we can say, I'm afraid I can't because I have this other arrangement. Or we can say, oh, I'd love to, but I have to help my brother with his homework. Or we can say, oh, that sounds like a great event. Unfortunately, I have this other thing happening at the same time. There are also more complicated situations, let's say, when we disagree with other people. Now, here is vital that we are polite because it could completely change the way people respond to our opinions. When you disagree, therefore, you should say, oh, I see what you're saying, but let's not forget this other aspect. Or, oh, you could be right, but let's not forget this. Or, yes, that's true, but I'm not sure this would work here. So always introduce your suggestions, your feedback, or your disagreement with softer, positive phrasings. Of course, general tips would include avoiding interrupting people when they talk, and if you do so, then always apologize. It's good to be reflexive, and of course, people make mistakes all the time, but it's important to realize, to mark that mistake, and then apologize for it. Also, use the language specific for your audience. If you're talking to a superior, then of course use the proper title, Miss or Mr, or use the proper name. That's very important. Of course, so far we've discussed using the right words, but that is not necessarily enough. You always also want to soften the tone of your voice to keep a firm posture, to hold your ground, and also to have the right intonation. Look at the differences between excuse me and excuse me. That definitely is going to make a huge difference in how people respond to your speech. I hope you find this video to be very useful, and I look forward to presenting other topics in the future. Goodbye!